Have you thought about the sustainability of villain tropes in fantasy settings? I'm Morgan, and I'm writing a book series.
In a lot of fantasy literature, we have our usual tropes of, the bad guys. And there's a wealth of great stories that have orcs and goblins and ogres and trolls and all kinds of these things. But one thing that a lot of the tropes don't always make clear is, why are they bad? And as a lot of these races become more mainstream in gaming, particularly as they become playable races, where before they were ugly, suddenly they become very attractive as soon as they become a playable race. In older depictions, they'll be irredeemably evil and cruel and ugly, and it gets kind of circular. Why are they ugly? They're ugly because they're bad. Why are they bad? Because they're ugly. And it never opens the loop to an external why. On the other hand, sometimes you see other depictions where they kind of get nerfed, where, oh, they're just misunderstood. You have to understand their culture, and really they're quite cuddly and kind. And that defeats kind of the use of them as any kind of source of conflict in the first place, if they were so benevolent, kind, and amiable.
And I'm not saying anything bad about any of those other stories. I've read them, I've loved them, I've enjoyed them. They're great. All I'm trying to do is tell you how my story's a bit different.
I've tried to reconcile the different uses of these. Let's take for orcs. I've tried to show you a pseudo-civilization of orcs where their actions will still seem cruel, inhuman, brutal, and aggressive, and yet show you the situation from their own perspective, where you can start to see why they're doing that, why they're doing those things that they do, how from their perspective it's necessary and even, in their view, kind or generous. Another thing to consider is, in most previous tropes, their entire economy and self-sustainment was based off of raiding others. Whenever civilizations clash, eventually there's a winner and a loser, given that most orcs live in very inhospitable terrain. They're the losers. They don't want to live in harsh mountain climbs with brutal winters. They want to live in the easy lowlands where the humans are taking what's theirs. So the orcs were the losers of these conflicts. So they had to leave or face extermination to seek that relative safety in terrain where the humans didn't want to pursue them. But then they're far enough away from the humans that they can't raid them anymore. At least not enough to sustain an entire civilization, even if it's just warring tribes and factions. So they had no one else to raid but themselves. So at some point, they had to develop their own means of production or their own mechanism for trade. Who would they trade with? They could trade with other humans, or they could trade with goblins, or any other number of possibilities of mountain denizens or other creatures and civilizations that lived in these harsh climes. But that whole train of thought is to show you that they have to be more than just this one-dimensional trope. And that's what I'm going to try and show you in my book coming out this summer, The Witches of Serna. Thanks.